Greetings, ladies and managers, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Combat for Us Isn't Just About the Fight, written by Random 3X. A light knock at his door distracted Alex from the aimless notes that he was scribbling. Come in.
It's Maxwell, sir.
Ah, yes. What brings you here at this late hour? Alex paused to look at the clock. Gods, morning.
Yeah, it's about the upcoming crusade, sir,
Maxwell said, his voice tinged with worry. Alex narrowed his eyes at the young werebeast. The boy had been growing increasingly worried since the war had been declared to the public. Worse still, his hometown was like to be the center of the coming conflict with the invaders. Sure, take a seat, Alex replied, gesturing to the seat across from his desk.
It just is, well, my father, you see.
Maxwell tried to start, but couldn't seem to find where to actually begin. You're worried about your friends and family back home being on the front lines, aren't you? Alex's voice was gentle and understanding. Well, I wouldn't worry too much.
But, sir, those blasted humans have amassed an imposing army,
Maxwell protested, only for his face to drop, realizing who he was talking to. Alex only smirked. Yes, we humans truly are blasted. Maxwell, this isn't the first crusade this place has dealt with. It won't even be the last. I may be a human, but this is my homeland, and I will help keep it safe.
Then why can't we fight?
Maxwell asked. Thanks to Alex's teaching, he and his classmates were easily above the rest of the students, but they had been expressly banned from even stepping outside the city walls, outside an evacuation order. Alex just shook his head. Because you are not ready for how humans fight.
Then how do they fight? Teach us.
Maxwell, combat for us isn't just about the fight.
But what?
Maxwell asked, confused. His teacher liked to talk in riddles and the odd ways, but this just didn't make sense. Alex, though, just let out a sigh. Take the Titans, for instance. They are incredibly strong. Or the dwarves and their sometimes ungodly durability. Maxwell nodded along. Due to their nature, they are prone for more frontal attacks. They use their given nature to their advantage.
This much is obvious, sir.
Maxwell grumbled at the non-answer he was getting from Alex. Then the Orcs and the werebeasts, how do they like to fight? Maxwell thought about Alex's question for a moment.
With self-reliance and honor?
Exactly. They will never back down from a fight and will press forward. What about the Ironwood Elves or the vampires? What traits do they have? Maxwell paused in thought. The primary thing outside unique individuals was their heightened senses.
Their senses,
he answered unsurely. Precisely. The Ironwoods and the vampire clans are unique in speed, but also their senses, making them exceptional in covert combat. Now, compared to these marvelous traits, what do humans... He paused to gesture to himself. What do we possess?
Numbers?
Nah, numbers can be got anywhere. What we humans have is simple. We have performance. As if to accentuate his point, Alex put on a pose Maxwell had seen many times. He's waiting for applause pose.
Performance?
Maxwell parroted incredulously. You doubt me, Alex replied, his demeanor changing. Are you calling me a liar? Maxwell retreated at the sudden shift of mood. I would think very hard about what you intend to say next, young Maxwell. Maxwell began to retreat further till his back bumped against the wall as he silently activated a light circle to conjure a defensive grid. See, Alex began, his demeanor shifting back to his usual relaxed attitude. Now, why did you back up and start all the protection magic?
You scared me.
Did I? My performance scared you. Did I convince you of a falsehood when I had no intention of ever harming you?
You were pretending?
Maxwell asked, only for Alex to nod.
To be fair, sir, I've seen what you can do. You're very scary when you want to be.
Very well, I will concede that point. But my reputation at large, what is it like? Maxwell paused as he tried to find a way to word unhinged maniac that shouldn't be allowed near children as politely as possible, before settling on one word.
Eccentric?
Oh, what a polite way of putting it. Maxwell, I have cultivated a reputation as a bit of a crazy person, but I am anything but in an actual fight. But if my enemy goes on expecting one thing but encounters another, they'll be found more on the back foot. That is how humans fight. They utilize a performance of sorts to convince their enemies incorrect information is, in fact, true. Alex explained, his words shrouded in intrigue.
But that's just deception.
Alex paused as he looked over at his students. I can see I haven't convinced you. How about a history lesson?
I'm not in the mood. I want answers.
Alex tilted his head. Well, one can lead to the other.
Very well,
Maxwell replied in a huff. So, do you know of the human general domain? Maxwell nodded. The general was famous for his skill with ambushes and traps. He often led his enemy to certain death. Well, do you know about his battle against Fort Huron?
No, sir.
Simple little thing. General Domain only had a few thousand arrayed against a fully stocked and reinforced fortress with a significant number of troops, far more than he had.
And he meant to take it?
Yes, in a way. You see, the first day he was outside the fortress. He arrayed his men in perfect parade ground formation. He then invited the enemy out to attack him.
No doubt a trap,
Maxwell posited. Exactly what the Fort commander believed. Domain was famous for his tricks and traps, so he could only assume seeing a force 1/5 of his own must be a bait.
What did he do?
Nothing. He had no reason to ride out, so the second day of the siege began, and Domain again arrayed his troops in formation and invited them to come out and attack. But the Fort commander believed that this was another attempt at baiting them outside.
Did he attack them?
No, he was cautious. He knew his enemy well, so he would not rise to the provocation. Then the third day came.
Let me guess. He lined his troops up and invited him for attack.
Exactly, Alex said with a nod. But this time, he noticed something. It might have been his imagination.
What did he see?
There were fewer troops lined up, Alex replied with a smirk.
Fewer troops?
The bait was even more enticing than previous 2 days.
But where had the missing troops gone?
Exactly what the commander wondered. The best his officers could come up with was that they had met up with some ambush force wherever it was hidden.
So, what happened next?
This continued day after day for 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Maxwell repeated it, surprised. Some reports say that it was only Domain and his honor guard by the end, though I suspected that was apocryphal.
What happened after the 2 weeks?
Domain vanished. You see, his goal was never to take the fort, and the troops he was displaying were very much his entire force.
So, it was a performance, a trick using his reputation.
Exactly! You see, Maxwell, it is not enough to know the enemy. You must also know yourself. Domain knew the enemy would be cautious because they knew how he worked. His true goal was Port Stain.
Maxwell barely contained a gasp of surprise. He now knew the battle that was being reinforced when the capital of his family's land was captured because the reinforcements never arrived. So, he...
Exactly. He had his forces spread out, eliminating every messenger sent to the fort asking for aid. That is the real reason why his forces dwindled. He delayed help that was desperately needed, and all because he put on a show.
So, this is how humans fight.
Exactly. We don't have the strength or durability of the titans and dwarves, the honor and technique of the werebeasts and orcs, nor the senses of the ironwoods and vampires. What we have instead is cunning.
Cunning?
Yes. We have to be clever to win. Where our strength fails us, our minds make up for it with crafty tricks and performances.
Are there any other examples?
Well, there was that general who built a fort around the fort that he was sieging, Alex replied, tapping his bearded chin. End of story. Story number 2. When the Earth Fell Silent, written by the Megauser. I met a human once, a long time ago, back when Earth still sang. They were a hardy people, survivors through and through. They even managed to prosper in places most thought impossible. They always held a special place for their home, staunch protectors of the cradle that birthed them. But the most notable aspect of them was the art, the music. They were a melting pot of cultures and ideas, this making for cultural innovation on scales few races have the capacity for, and fewer still
would actively pursue with such zeal. Anyone within scanner range could tap into the meteor of Earth. They never tried to encrypt it, claiming it as a spiritual enrichment owed to all life. It was only in the final days that we saw a new side of them, a fierceness we thought them incapable of, and the sorrow with which they could lay waste to others. When the great machines came from beyond, the rest of us fled, and who could blame us? When star-sized behemoths are eating their way through your systems, only the mad and stupid stay behind in defense of a heap of rock. It's a funny thing, madness, as well as stupidity. They are so awfully close to bravery, and bravery the humans had in abundance. Whilst the coalition of the time pulled back its borders and evacuated homeworlds towards colonies, the humans did the reverse, pulling all resources from their colony efforts, making Sol into a fortress the likes of which we hadn't thought possible. And to this day, we scarcely have the capacity to replicate. The Great Imperial Palace is modeled after the remnants of Sol, after all. They stripped themselves of their precious culture, silenced their ever-present hum of life that radiated from their world, and shifted into a war economy we still use as an emergency model. They held on longer than all expected, longer than many dared to dream. So long, in fact, that some began to think that they could hold forever. Hope. They gave us hope that we might still return victorious to our own homes. And then, try as they might, they could hold no longer. After 10 cycles under siege that broke other systems in days, the mighty Sol defense buckled, and the machines swung in. And as we watched the great Sol bastion be breached, they sang a melody to the stars themselves. Billions of souls sang as one, in defiance to the machine god that ate the sun. They ended the war that day, detonated a dark matter bomb we had only theorized possible, and cleaved the known galaxy in two. The last words from Earth, a line from a 39th century poet. Let this aspect of Babylonia cleanse away the darkness. End of story.
I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Dragon Soup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Light Jock, Dragzoon WRE, and Lord Azrakal. Thank you very much.